Kal Alao Malak Yahweh, Wa Yahushai, Bahashem, Rachak, Wadash, and double honors to the elders of Jemas Ruel, blessings unto those men, and blessings and salutations to the Akimater in truth, pushing his word in all sincerity and in honesty. With that being said, Shalom Israel, Prakta, today's lesson, the high tensions and quarrels. And according to this Reddit.com article, the boss of JP Morgan said 10 months ago that World War III has already begun, as you can clearly see here. It has begun in the sense of tensions and quarrels. And when it comes to these high tensions, to those high tensions and quarrels, it shall eventually lead to a full-scale destructive war. As soon as they implement that CHIP of Revelation 13:16 through 18 around the world, then that war of utter destruction comes quickly. So for that destructive war to come quickly, there has to be high tensions first, to begin with, in order to kick it off quickly. And what has happened with the so-called Israeli state and its surrounding neighbors has truly stirred up the surrounding nations. Remember that on the 3rd of January of 2020, Qasem Soleimani, an Iranian major general, was killed by an American drone strike that was ordered by the US President Donald Trump near Baghdad International Airport in Iraq. And they still remember that. And that happened while traveling to meet Iraqi Prime Minister Adil Abdul Mahdi. And remember that Iran also vowed to take vengeance for the US killing of its most powerful military commander general, Qasem Soleimani, back in 2020. So what transpired in the past will take effect in the time of that greater war to come. Also remember what the scripture of 2 Esdras 15:30 has said in regards to the Carmanians, which speaks of the Iranians, aka the Persians. The scripture has said that the Carmanians shall rage in wrath and come with great power. And that's exactly what they shall do. They shall come with great power. The Carmanians. Those are the Iranians, aka the Persians. With that being said, let's go over to 2 Esdras 15:30. Second Esdras 15:30. Also, the Carmanians raging in wrath shall go forth as the wild boars of the wood, and with great power shall they come and join battle with them, and shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians. And the Russians are also going to take part in that war. The Carmanians represents the Iranian wild boars of Iran. And if you know anything about wild boars, they are known to be extremely aggressive, strong, fast, and territorial. And that's how these Iranians shall be in the time of that destructive war to come, you see? The Iranians on that day shall be angry, and it is prophesied that they shall come with great power. That great power speaks of their enormous military arsenal at their disposal. So Iran should not be underestimated, because they have leveled the playing field in the possession of nuclear capability. They now possess very sophisticated and accurate theater ballistic missiles with a range capacity of 1,200 miles. And they also possess tactical ballistic missiles, those TBMs, and cruise missiles. They are also in possession of unmanned systems and drones. So no longer can these small nations be bullied. These smaller nations can no longer be bullied, because they have officially leveled the playing field when it comes to nuclear weaponry and other sorts of weapons. They are now in possession of nuclear capability and other sorts of advanced weaponry. So according to the scripture of 2 Esdras 15:30, the Carmanians, which are known as the Iranian wild boars, shall rage in wrath, just like boars do in the wild. and with great power shall they come. I was watching a video of a board the other day, and the board just went right through this aluminum fence. I mean, knocked the gate right down to the ground with extreme force. And the scriptures does say that they shall come in great power. You see? But Iran also vowed a painful revenge after the Israeli attack that killed several top Iranian generals in that 12-day war as well. And that happened from the 13th of June to the 24th of June of 2025. And when it comes to the so-called Middle East right now, many surrounding countries are starting to despise the ongoing actions of the so-called Israeli state. And many nations are now against the so-called Israeli state. Just look at the current conflict with Traore and Netanyahu, and of the current tensions that the Israeli state now has with Turkey, right? Because Turkey condemned the Israeli attack on Hamas in Doha and says it adopted terrorism as state policy. And when it comes to that troublesome state, the Bible has said that the least of the flock shall draw them out. So tensions are extremely high due to this current Israeli-Hamas war. And as a result, the nations are now angry, you see? Right, because they are also being taken out of their comfort zone. All these continuous high tensions and of the stirring up of these nations will eventually lead to a full-scale nuclear war. Once that CHIP of Revelation 13:16 through 18 takes place, then that inevitable Third World War follows quickly. But it shall be the small hatters that shall draw out the Americans to war. Let's go over to that scripture. Here we have Jeremiah 49:20. Therefore hear the counsel of the Lord, Yahweh Bashem Yahushua, that he had taken against Edom, and his purposes that he had purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them. You see? So Esau, Edom refers to the wicked of the earth according to the scripture of Malachi 1:4. Teman represents Germany today. The Temanites are the Germans. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out represents the small hatters. They shall draw out the armies of Babylon the Great, aka America, to that final Third World War of utter destruction. And the Temanites are considered the smartest out of the whole entire nation of Edom, which are the Germans. And when it comes to the small hatters in history, they were responsible for World War I and World War II, and they're going to start World War III as well. One thing to remember is that when it comes to these bankers wars, those bank wars are very profitable in the lining up of their pockets. Wars are very profitable. But upon that final Third World War, that the least of the flock, small hatters, shall bring forth, that will be the end of their reign upon earth. That Third World War of destruction will end all Edomite rulership on earth, and Babylon the Great shall never rise up again. One thing to understand is that that Third World War of utter destruction will end all Edomite rulership on earth. That will be the end of their rule upon this earth. That scripture of surely the least of the flock shall draw them out is also found upon Jeremiah 50:45. Let's also go over to that scripture. Let's go over to that scripture of Jeremiah 50 and verse 45. Therefore hear ye the counsel of the Lord, Yahweh Bashem Yahushua, that he had taken against Babylon, and his purposes that he had purposed against the land of the Chaldeans. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. You see? Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. It's in reference to the small hatters bringing out the Americans to war. the so-called Israeli state will be the ones to draw out the Americans to World War III. It is the Lord that controls these wars because he is a man of war. Exodus 15:3. But if Iran is attacked, Russia steps in. And if Israel gets attacked, America steps in. So the Lord has everything covered. The Lord is a man of war, according to Exodus 15:3, as I said. But it shall be the least of the flock that shall draw them out to war. That's prophecy. And therefore he has covered all angles. World War III is inevitable, but it's just as the scripture has said, surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. They shall draw out the Americans to war. But if Iran was to get attacked, Russia steps in. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. That land that the small hats now inhabit and occupy shall be destroyed in that nuclear war, along with modern day Babylon the Great, which is America. Modern day Babylon shall never rebuild, but the land that the small hats now inhabit shall surely rebuild to welcome in the true people of the Lord, Yahweh Yahushai. Because the scripture of Isaiah 14:1 says, for the Lord will have mercy on Jacob, and will yet choose Israel and set them in their own land, and the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. Right, those strangers speak of those Israelite foreigners. And this is a near future prophecy that the Holy Scriptures have foretold since the very beginning. And when it comes to that so-called established Israeli state of 1948, they are truly hated by their surrounding neighbors. And it was on May 14th of 1948 when David Ben-Gurion, the head of the Jewish Agency, proclaimed the establishment of the state of Israel, which was never supposed to become a state. When it comes to that troublesome Israeli state of Israel, they are truly hated by the Persians of Iran and by the so-called surrounding Arab nations, but now by the other countries as well. Look at Traore in Africa, perfect example. But when it comes to the Holy Scriptures, it's been prophesied that the least of the flock shall draw out the Americans into that inevitable, destructive Third World War. And the small hatters will be responsible for that Third World War as well when they draw out the Americans to that final showdown. But with that being said, Ka'ala Malak Yahweh, Wa Yahushai, Bahashem, Raha Kodash, and double honors to the elders of Jemes Ruel. Blessings unto those men, and blessings and salutations to the Akim out there in truth, pushing his word in all sincerity and in honesty. With that being said, Shalom Israel, Barakatah.